Morning, all. I
Hey,
think
good
this
morning.
morning, Sachin, Abhishek, and John. I think we'll
Hi
give
everyone.
some more minutes, a couple of seconds, wait for others to join.
Morning, Sandra.
Morning, Sandra.
Morning.
Morning, Darren.
Morning, Darren. Morning, Bhavna.
Could we turn the music down a little bit?
Good call. Good call, John.
Mhm.
Morning, all, and welcome to the session. As you know, we have joined here on this roundtable session to discuss some of the interesting topics that were raised or mentioned or highlighted in at Integrate 2023 that was held earlier this month. So before we get into those details, let me first talk about who we are and who we work for. So can we move on to the next slide, please? Yes. So before we go into the actual details, let me firstly introduce the panel. So it consists of myself, Deepa Menon, John Anderson, Abhishek Verma, and Sachin Yadav. We all work for Cluster Reply UK, who is a Microsoft partner and specializes in providing cloud consultancy services. We have about two decades worth of experience in this field, and we provide expert services besides cloud, specializing in cloud or Microsoft integrations. We provide consultancy services in Power Platform, application innovation services, data engineering, and we also have a huge expertise in providing cloud security and infrastructure services. So that's a little bit about who we work for, a little bit more about who we are personally or individually. We have John Anderson with us, who is our principal architect, and he brings with himself a whole dearth of experience and knowledge in the integration space. We have Abhishek, who is again an architect and has is very knowledgeable and again brings a lot of experience with him. Both myself and Sachin, we are senior integration consultants. And again, we have exposure or we have worked on a number of client projects where we have specialized in Azure as well as BizTalk integration solutions. So that's a little bit about us. Um, I mentioned that we will be discussing in this session some of the key points that were mentioned or discussed at Integrate 2023. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, Integrate 2023, for those who are not aware, is the world's largest Microsoft integration tech conference. And I think anybody who is involved in doing any sort of integration should be attending this because I think that's where you get to know the roadmap for many of the products and services that Microsoft provides, as well as key features, whether it be in general availability mode or preview mode. You get to hear a lot of the exciting stuff that's coming across, and I think anybody who is in that space should be attending this. You get a lot of information from there, and as you can see, both Sachin and Abhishek had the opportunity to attend it in person earlier this month, and hence why we are sitting here to discuss, hear more about it from them. Before I go over to Sachin to kickstart the session, I'd like to just remind the audience that please feel free to drop in comments, feedback, or any questions in any of the channels that you're watching this from, and we'll try our level best to cover those in this session. Okay. So over to you, Sachin. I think you are going to start off with API Center, which I must admit did catch my eye. So all over to you.
Yeah, thanks Deepa for quick intro and yeah, welcome all. Good morning. So yeah, as Deepa mentioned that we have gone through many sessions in Integrate and we thought like some of the new features that could be good to explore and discuss about in this roundtable session. So the first one is API Center, which is available in private preview. and you can request for the access, like it should be uh, based on the customers, you can get the access, but it would be free of charge for now. But going forward, once it will be available, and then you'll see the billing, the pricing for the same. And the API center is a new service supposed to run in parallel with the API management service, and that needs to be provisioned in Azure portal. Okay, so it's not in API management service, but basically you need to provision the separate service. And you might think that, see, we already have the API management service, then what's the difference between API center and API management? So API management service is kind of like having one-to-one relation with the one development center, or you can say the portal, where you will see the APIs published by your develop or the API development team. Whereas API center is a kind of one-to-many, where one API center to many API management gateways. It could be in the Azure, or it could be in any other backend hosting gateway like APG or MuleSoft. So, for example, the enterprise level customers, where they have many organizations and departments as per their business units or geographical locations, they might have a different set of APIs based on their department, what they do, and the data that they serve, and they manage with the gateways that might be suitable for their team, like the skill set and so. And in that case, it would be difficult to find that if any of the department already having the APIs that they serve for different business. So, for example, the automotive industry, where they have the different units for, like, building the design for the vehicles, or for the inventories, or for the procurement. So they can expose the APIs for those systems, and they can basically get into one place. That could be the intention, like to go for the enterprise level. And so with the help of API center, what you can do, like, you can register all your APIs in central place for better inventory. API could be of any type, like it could be REST, GraphQL, or it could be it could be of SOAP kind of thing, and it could be in any stage, like development, production, or you can deploy it in any location. As I said, like it could be supported by any backend gateway, and it can be managed through by different solution, different team. Yeah. So the features that basically available through the API center that we have seen in the integrate is, like, you can do a kind of API registration in the inventory, like a different page, like you see in the developer portal normally. And you can maintain the versioning, you can configure the backend implementation and deployment status, and you can mention about the environments, so from where basically that API has been hosted or exposed through. Yeah. So basically, this approach will help the enterprise to build the API first, the approach, and the data-driven solution. So you can come up with the APIs. Right? You have the lots of data with your department, or within your organization, and you want to expose that data securely within your organization, or maybe explicitly, if that could be the business need. Then yeah, you can do that through the API center, and it serve the purpose of no, it can accelerate the innovation within your organization. It will improve the time to market, so that you can find all those APIs in one place,
Mm.
basically. Like, you can search based on the tags. So for discoverability, it also enable and capture and present the information about the APIs that includes the specification. And another feature that support the governance and discoverability could be like metadata properties. And these metadata properties are tag based, like it could be like you can define your own tags as well. For the uniformity, it has unified built-in tags, but you can customize it, and it's compatible with JSON, and basically with the YAML as well, and that can help you to do the schema validation. Yeah. So that's a key concept around, and the fundamentals, like why they are coming up with the API center on top of API management. So, yeah, any thoughts around from team on these aspects?
Yeah, no, no, thanks for that, Sachin. So you've addressed my initial one when I first
Mhm.
heard about this, which was, why do we need an API center when we've already got the developer portal and APIM? And that has really given me a better understanding of, being able to manage the enterprises across the whole estate,
mm,
not just those that are in one single instance of APIM. But one thing I'd be interested to know, because it's a common ask that I get, on various customers, is again specifically around discoverability and reusability of APIs,
yeah,
is being able to easily identify where an API may expose or receive a specific data element or property, let's say. So looking at what I can see on the screen there, where it's got metadata.
yeah.
So would it be possible to use API Center to, for instance, run a query to identify all the APIs that, for instance, expose a property of say, country or whatever, for an
Yeah,
example?
yeah, exactly. That's the intention of like having the unified schema for the metadata. There you can configure some keywords like this, and you can group, you can classify your APIs according to the level of the classification or categorization you would like to do.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
I'd say that'll be really handy to address some of the
I,
common questions I get from clients, and I know a few specifically already that have a large estate, and this would
yeah,
be a valuable tool.
mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah,
I have seen the same issue, like not the issue, like everywhere when we go and discover an API. So API catalog is one of the concern. People in the organization, they're not aware of what all APIs they have and how they has, like what all content they support. So the same thing which you have just asked John, it's a good way to discover your API at
yeah,
central place. You can just query on the object, like the business object data, right? What
mm,
all APIs support the customer information, what all supports the suppose inventory or the personal details. So yeah, it's
Yeah.
easy. I will say the single place to register, and like based on
You,
the metadata you can
Yeah.
discover your APIs.
yeah,
I guess a key
Sachin,
a, a key differentiator also between this and the developer portal, which is designed aimed more at developer usage,
Yeah.
where they can get snippets of code and test an API out. Where this would be more caters for non-developers, let's say. It could be solution architects who are looking to find an API for design, or even potentially business users, let's say.
yes.
yeah,
So Sachin, there are already two questions on the platform.
yeah,
One of the questions is, I think you may have partly already answered it. API
mm-hmm.
Center is a service in its own right.
Yeah.
Is API service in its a service? Sorry, is API Center a service in its own right, or is it to be used with APIM, or instead of?
No, it's not mandatory to use with API management, but it will enable. It could be top of API management that if you want to, build the marketplace like a
Yeah,
digital marketplace for your organization, it might not be with the same API management instance within the same. You can say in the subscription, but it could be across. Like that will give you a place basically to do the promotion of the APIs in your organization basically. So from
yeah,
my point of view, like the keynote that I can see that it will enable the organizations to have the marketplace where they can have the APIs from different departments that someone can see that they have need of getting this data. Oh, they can look at a particular API that already available, then they can reach out to see like, oh yeah, this is a specification for that API through the API center, and they can start consuming those. Like they can get in touch with the team who normally build that API or support. So basically, to address like such things, like sometimes we build the APIs but we might lose like oh, do we really have these APIs serving this purpose or this functionality that we could not find apparently. Like as we grow, like if we build the integration and it keep on growing, then it might be difficult to track the inventory of your API. So that could be one of the purpose, like
Yeah,
I would say. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's
Uh,
basically
Just
another service, but it provides a centralized location for
correct.
all your
Yeah,
yeah.
APIs
yeah.
within the same.
and
I think to
just
specifically answer that question specifically, I read the announcement earlier, and the
Mm,
official line from Microsoft is it's designed to run in parallel with
yeah,
API
yeah,
management.
yeah,
yeah.
Yeah,
And just to
enhancements.
add to it, it's not only mapping our all APM to the center. We
mm,
have a concept of called environments here, where you can set
yeah,
up
Yeah.
your environments, and you can also map these services from other gateway provider
yeah, yeah,
outside Azure.
yeah.
So I think we should move on to the next topic, Sachin.
Yeah, just one point there in terms of the access. So yeah, Microsoft has come up with the same level of the administrative access to the APIs on this, like role-based
Oh,
access
yeah.
controller policy, and we can use the workspace to do the scoping of the permission to the different teams on the resources that we are seeing. Yeah,
It's interesting you mentioned workspace because
yeah,
we have a
yeah.
question where somebody has asked what are workspaces for?
Mm-hmm. So it's like a logical grouping of like when you do like such things where the resources at resource level, how you want to classify that one. Yeah.
Okay.
And yeah, Microsoft requested like since this is in preview, so
Mm,
they said that if any of the team using this one or a developer using this one and have any feedback or any suggestions, they would like to know, and they have shared the email address like API Center Preview at Microsoft.com.
right.
Yeah,
Yes, that's handy to know.
yeah,
Thanks. Thanks for that. I think in interest of moving on, yes,
yeah,
let's get
sure.
on to the next topic. Yeah.
Yeah, next slide, please. You. Okay. So here we are talking about Azure load testing. Yeah, that's another feature that we have seen, and it's available. I mean, it's in GA, so it's available for all the customers. And the purpose here, like nowadays, I mean, as of now, like most of the times we use the different load testing tools. I particularly use Postman, JMeter. So intention from Microsoft, like since we are building these integrations and we have some common the technology and tools and some features available out of the box for the Azure services like Azure Monitor and App Insight. So basically leveraging that, and if we can have the load testing service available in the Azure itself, then that might help to build something scalable of to help these building the scalable integration. So yeah, this is another service that we said that it helps developer and testers to generate the high scale load and run simulation with fully managed load testing service. Yeah, so it runs in its own you can say the container or kind of the service. Okay, and it create the test quickly without knowledge of having the load testing tool. Like you need not to get the expertise of JMeter, but again if you have that expertise and if you have the scripts for JMeter, you can simply upload those and you can extend it further. So there are some key concepts or building blocks for the architecture that we are talking about when we say the load testing framework or Azure load testing. So first thing here, it's about the virtual users. So virtual users runs a particular test case against your server application, like how many users you would like to see independently calling the application, and so yeah. So the total number of virtual users for your load test, it might depend on the how you want to write the test script and the test engine that we are going to use. So I can touch upon the test engines shortly. What it means in terms of the load testing services.
Right.
But yeah, there are a few other aspects, like if you see from the testing background, like how many requests per second that you need to look for a kind of throughput or latency that you see in the application that you need to find out.
Right.
So based on that, you need to decide like how many virtual users you need to
Keep it.
consider for the script. Yeah. So based on that calculation, normally with the Azure load testing, they're saying that we can go for the request per second into the latency in seconds. So for example, if you have the application latency that we see that it could be 10 milliseconds to simulate around, let's say 1000 requests per second, then ideally you should have the load test scripted in the way like you should have 10 virtual users, and there is a cost factor along with the number of virtual users that you are going to use, so we can discuss that as well. Yeah.
Right.
So the other factor is about load testing resource. So that's the main service that we need to provision here. It's a top level resource for your load testing activities or the environment, and it's a centralized place to view, manage your load testers and test results. Yeah, basically. So whatever you see, it will be under that container of a load testing resource. Yeah. And again here, yeah, Microsoft has given the option of like you can have the role based access control to give the permission to the intended no, the team member and so. And
Yeah.
at the same time, sometimes you see that you need to use different configuration for your tests. It might be a confidential information like credentials or secret or keys basically. So this load testing framework will allow you to get the managed identity for the Azure Key Vault, for example. So it does support such features that you can access the other Azure resources with the managed identities. Yeah.
Yeah. I think John has a question for
Yeah.
you, Sachin.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, one of the things I'd be keen to understand is can we or how easy or is it possible and how easy is it to plug into a CI/CD process so we could include
Yeah.
load testing and then base decisions on the results that come back from it?
Yeah, correct. It does support the CI/CD workflows, so we can discuss about that shortly, John. But basically, yeah, that could be another, the you can say the advantage of having the load testing plugin in, and during the development workflow itself, you will find that before going to the deployment, you can already have the result of the regression of your application. Is that the case that you are saying, John, here?
Yes,
Yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. So yeah, it does support, if I can say upfront, like it does support CI/CD workflows, and you can plug in these test scripts or test runs in your CI/CD pipeline.
Cool. Do we know if what products it support yet? Is it does it support like GitHub
Yeah,
and
yeah,
Azure
it does support
DevOps?
to GitHub and Azure DevOps.
Right.
Yeah,
Both, yeah.
yeah,
And another good thing about this project which I really like is the visualization same time. So when
yeah,
you're running your scripts, right, when you are simulating your load, you can see how your services are behaving in terms of utilizations, memory, CPU, requests per second, the latency, and
mm,
then and there you can take a decision how your service is going to behave in the production, whether you need to scale up your services, whether you need the high tier or like
Yeah.
yeah,
whatever tier you have to do. So it's really a good tool, to be honest,
mm,
for a developer, for a tester, and to be
Mm.
used as part of your CI/CD pipeline.
yeah,
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I see this as a big plus.
yeah,
I mean, for expediting delivery of APIs. I mean,
Yeah.
being able to rapidly load test,
yeah,
APIs that we develop, as
mm,
well as making any or as well as changing the make to any existing ones, and
mm,
particularly those ones where where we've used APIM policies, and
mm,
because as by
Mm.
nature, they're so easy to introduce a change to
mm,
or validation policy and our extra bit of validation or transformation within a policy,
mm,
but it's then understanding what latency that potentially introduces and
Impact.
being able to quickly run those tests against it means you can quickly, add policies, but then quickly confirm
yeah.
that, what's the impact of adding those policies. So yeah, I see this as a huge plus.
Yeah, and this component called test engine, which is a computing infrastructure basically managed by Microsoft, will give you the option of like if you need to scale out,
Right.
during your load testing, like you need to know that, oh, I need to have this number of instances, but if you want to extend it further, and there are some recommendations from Microsoft, like I mean, in terms of how many instances that you can have for your test run or test case. They said that maximum you can go for 45 test engine in any test run. Yeah.
What does the cost model look like
Yeah,
for
yeah,
this service?
yeah. So in terms of the costing, like for the this one, like the service, like load testing resource, it costs like around 8.10 pound per month for if you have the active status for the service for that month. Yeah, but it would cover around 50 virtual users hours. So that might be not that much at one go, but it would be out of the box for this the resource that you are provisioning. On
Right.
top of it, as you go with like increasing the virtual users usage, they will cost you. So you can see, I mean, in the next slide I can touch upon
Yes.
the bracket, but their intention is like if you are keep on using the number of virtual users, then the cost might reduce further, like it would be like as much as you use and the cost might go down, that is the model that they're saying. Yeah.
Okay. I think then it's time to let's to move on to the next slide.
Hmm.
and we
Yeah,
can just quickly discuss that if
yeah.
we're
There
out
are
of time.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Some quick points that I would like to highlight here. Like I think someone raised about like which services it does support. So basically, it supports to the web application, mobile app, and even the APIs. Yeah, and in the Azure, it does support to most of the Azure services, including the API management, Azure Logic Apps, Service Bus, and the outcome, like the metrics, whatever the result we see, normally it's encrypted and within the same region. So that's another factor to be considered, like the data remain in the same region. Yeah,
Right,
and the encryption could be with the self service, I mean this service managed key, or it could be the customer managed key, like uh, we can configure the key for the encryption of the outcome that we see. And the metrics are basically in two format, like the server side and the client side. Client side is mainly for the looking at the execution report, like the number of virtual users, the request response time, or number of failed requests.
right,
Whereas the server side metrics we normally see for the Azure hosted applications. Yeah, and it will be with the help of the Azure monitor or the application insight, so that might surface the data there. Yeah,
right. Okay,
and other thing, I mean, if you have on premise the application that you need to, or API that you need to test, yeah, you can do through the vnet injection, and through that you can test that as well. Yeah.
right. So I think if we can maybe quickly summarize the key benefits before we can move on to Abhishek.
Yeah. Yeah. So the key benefits, what I can see, that Azure load testing automatically incorporate best practices for
Yeah,
Azure networking. So sometimes you misunderstood, like I mean, the application or the environment might misunderstood that it might be a security risk of, if you send number of requests to the APIs, it might throttle out your the environment, or you can say the application.
right.
But within the Azure load testing, it would be like following the best practices for Azure networking, and that will make sure that the test that you're running is securely and reliable, basically. Yeah.
Okay. I think that kind of summarizes what
Yeah.
we have discussed.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we went to a lot of detail. Thank you for
Yeah.
that, Sachin.
Yeah. Yeah.
We do have some more questions on this topic, but I think we will try and address them towards the end of
Yeah,
the session.
absolutely.
Sure. Yeah.
So over to you, Abhishek, with the next topic.
Hi, hello. So data mapper, it's we all know about it. So it's a new tool, especially for the people who coming from the integration background and working experience with BizTalk. We all have worked a lot on the visual data mapper in BizTalk. So this is a new component that is introduced on Visual Studio Code. It's a new extension. So if you search for Azure Logic App Data Mapper, you will find, yeah, you will find the extension, and you have to add it to your Visual Code. So this will allow you to map visually like we do in BizTalk, and the people who work on Mapforce at uh, similar tools. Just one key thing I would like to highlight: when you add this extension, you have to do a couple of settings change in your local settings.json file. One is for Azure Web Jobs feature flag, and another is the function worker runtime.
Okay.
So Microsoft tried with a new approach here to focus on the target, not on the source. So what it means, like once you select your source and destination schemas, you start working from the destination to the source. And from the source, you just select the nodes or the element which you want to map. So if you have a long, big schema, you can just select the fields which you want to map, and you will have a concise list of fields.
Okay. Better
Also,
visibility and readability. Yeah.
yes, so and it's got feature of zoom in, zoom out, so you can zoom in, zoom
Right.
out, and you can scroll the screen. So it's good in terms of visualization, to be honest. Uh, it got a built-in functions, not functoids. So we people from the BizTalk works.
I'm so glad they dropped that name. For me,
Yeah.
it was like some version of a musical breath mint when I think of it.
Yeah, yeah. So I thought to call it out. So no functoids, only functions. And map checker. So one of the key good thing which I found in this new data mapper is the map checker. So once you're done with your maps, it shows whether your map is correct in terms of whether you have mapped all the required fields. So it gives you a green tick. If it is there any problem with your mapper, it will show red. So it's good to like it's
Oh,
yeah, so it's compile before you test it.
right. That's
uh,
handy.
yeah, at moment I think it's support XML and JSON both. So what it means, you can do from XML to JSON transformation, JSON to XML, XML to XML, and JSON to JSON. So
Yeah.
yeah, and we learn also in the conference, CSV, or you can say the
Mm.
flat file is also coming soon. They have
Mm.
not
Okay.
committed on any dates, but it's in their roadmap. So
Right.
we will soon see the
Yeah.
flat file also.
I think there was a question about liquid somewhere here, isn't it? Whether it's
Yeah.
being supported or not.
Uh, yeah, so yeah,
Controversial, maybe.
I will cover that question. That's an interesting question asked there also.
Right.
But yeah, just wait for me. So yeah, just wait for that section to come.
Yeah.
Okay. Just talking about the they mentioned the functions there. Sorry, not functoids. I almost said it again. How mature would you say the toolbox is compared to tools such as BizTalk? I mean, it's pretty unfair to compare it at this stage, I think, because it's such an early release of it. But
Mm.
from what from what the little bit that I've seen of this, there's some significant enhancements, improvements, let's say, over what was provided in BizTalk. So, for instance, one of the ones that I saw called out was around the conditional functions, where in BizTalk, if you wanted to do an if-else statement, you had to chain together loads of logical
Yeah,
functoids. But in this one, I think they've created a conditional if-else, which is already a massive improvement for me, because the mapper was always something I enjoyed. You could solve very complex problems with,
Mhm.
and easing that burden is a great leap forward. I mean, so is there any other enhancements that you've seen from the toolbox?
yeah. So just to highlight, it's a public preview, so we will see a lot of new function getting on. But I, I tried myself, and I can say it's got a rich list of function at the moment. I tried a lot myself, and I
Mm.
didn't find any issue with them. Uh, Also, just to add to it, as we do the custom functoid in BizTalk, here the Microsoft has a plan, a roadmap where we can write our own
Yeah.
custom
Mm.
.NET
Yeah.
framework code,
Mm.
and
Yes.
that will support your inline function, inline accessibility, the small snippet you
Mm.
can define, and then you can use it as your own custom function in the mapper.
Right.
And that can be reusable, apart from that same map, like you can use it multi places, like if you want to use it in different maps as well, it would be in your, you can say, kind of in the list available, like you can see
Mm.
the other functions there. Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, Abhishek, to support that point, like since it's in public preview, and Microsoft said that they have intention to see that most of the functions of funcoids available in BizTalk, but at present, John, they are saying that they are going with the one that are most useful
Yeah,
for,
absolutely.
and targeting the roadmap for BizTalk to Azure cloud migration.
Mhm.
Yeah,
See, the Microsoft idea is to unblock the BizTalk migration use
yeah,
case
Yeah.
first.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's their main focus.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the
True.
another good function which I found is really the manual test option. So once you're done with your mapping, right? So there's an option to test your map. So if you look at the screen at the top, there's a test button. If
Yeah.
you click that, it will pop out, and where
Hmm.
you can paste the sample input message, and you can run the test. If it is good, you will get 200. Okay,
Ah,
otherwise,
cool.
so
Is
you can.
this? Oh, sorry. I was just about on that point there. Is it? I read some. Just hopefully you can confirm, or might have got it wrong. Is that they've introduced something within the IDE so that when it displays an error, you can actually click on the error and it will take you to the point in the actual graphical map where
Yes.
which needs looking at.
Yes.
Oh,
So it's
that's
yeah. So
yeah.
it will guide you to the location or place where it's error. Yeah.
They bring
So
that into focus, I guess.
yes,
Yeah,
focus,
brilliant.
focus. So idea here is to test your map before you start plugging it into the workflow in the Logic app. That's the idea. And once you are done, like the people who has experience with working with Logic app standards, you will find all these artifacts under the artifact folder. So there's one new folder you will see there's called map definition folder that contain the YAML definition of your map, basically. That's the metadata, and you will see the accessibility in the map folder. So someone has asked the question on the liquid. So I will like to answer now. So at the moment, the Microsoft plan is to produce the XSLT as a code behind the output. There was question asked, why not liquid when we are supporting JSON transformation? Uh, we haven't heard any clear reply from Microsoft. It looked like they don't have the liquid transformation as output in near future, but like it may come in future, but not at the moment.
I think we can. I think we may have time to just take a quick question on this topic, which is, which plan does this go with? Standard or consumption plan, or and any chance MS have plans to roll out this feature to use within Azure portal rather than used through VS Code?
Good questions. So at the moment, it is with standard, and the extension is only available in Visual
Yes, of
Studio
course.
Yeah.
Code.
Yeah.
But in future, the plan is also to have experience on portal. So definitely, that's Microsoft plan to have a service on portal also to use graphically there.
Yeah, actually, there's another good question from Darren at the top there around. It was never a dumb question, Darren, but having never used BizTalk, because I appreciate we've talked quite extensively about comparing it to BizTalk. What artifacts does the data mapper create, XLT or etc.? And once the code is deployed to the portal, presumably some kind of visual mapping is not available.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, like when you save the mapper, right, so it will first produce your map definition file. So that's a uh, 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 the definition around your mapper. And you can also see the output as XSLT. That's a code behind, that's the actual output of your map that will get placed in the maps of folder inside the artifacts.
But I guess when they're deployed to a Logic app, would they exist as XSLT then, or
Yeah.
as a liquid file or something?
No, it's XSLT.
Sure.
Again, to use the map in the Logic app, they have come up with a new action. They call it transformation for data mapper. So
Okay.
you have to select a new action for in Logic app standard, and then there you will select your map from there. Basically, it's XSLT as we are
So
doing
I guess
as we are
again,
doing in the current transformations
so I'm
actions.
thinking that as like from a, if we look at like a Logic App standard or an integration account where we can store these, I guess these objects, once they're created, can be stored in those repositories as referenceable
Yeah.
XSLT objects.
Yes, so in Logic App standards, like if you know, like in the workspace, when you create the workspace for the Logic App in the solution, so within that solution, we have a folder called artifacts.
Mm.
So all the artifacts, whether it's schema or map, they
Yeah.
contain within as part of your Logic App
Logic
standard
standard.
solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no need to put it
Sure.
in the integration account. You can do it, but
Yeah.
Mm.
with Logic
Generally
App
available.
standard, it's come as part of the workspace.
Yeah.
And it
Sure.
will go in the same package, John. So
Excellent.
basically, yeah.
I think this is quite a good point for mentioning XSLT. I think one thing, and maybe you can confirm this, one thing I saw that's potentially on, which is coming down the track for this, is that if there would be provide, whereas before, if you wanted to do in grouping and sorting, you had to go and do it in a bit of custom XSLT. But is it true that they're going to be including this as functionality within this mapper?
Yes, so that's their plan. So if we move to the next slide, we can talk about it. So Microsoft plan is like one thing that they're coming very soon under development is to create your own functions and customize your function. So with that, what I mean is initial scope is to based on XSLT 3 and XPath 3.1. We can write we can use the XPath inline codes. We can use the inline codes like C# and other scripting language snippets, and with that you can write your own custom functions. So
Okay, I
if you
think
look at
sorry, Abhishek, I was just going to say that we had a question by Abdul Rahman. He's asked whether we can use custom XSLT in Data Mapper.
yes, you can use, but not at moment. This is in the plan, as I say, it's coming soon. So if you look here, so they try to show an example using the custom function using the custom XSLT in there. So where the can produce like can did a demo. It's a recorded demo. So
Right.
where he tried to calculate the age out of date of birth, right, using his own custom function using the custom XSLT there.
Right. Okay. And another question that he has raised is, can we also use Azure functions in the mapper as well as in addition to the built-in mapping function? I think you may have covered this.
Not at the moment, but
Okay.
maybe in future. We don't
Right.
know.
Okay.
Maybe it's something good to push to the product team if
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I know they're always asking us for our input and that, so that's something we could
Yeah.
certainly
Feedback.
push
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
So,
see,
so absolutely, any to the audience, if you have any suggestions for improvements, please post them on here or things you would like to see, and we can push them up to the product team when we have our when we interact with them.
the thing is, like the people who are coming from the BizTalk background, they might see still a big gap here at the
Mm.
moment. As I
Yeah.
said, it's
But
in
I
the
say,
preview.
yeah, exactly. But I think it's unfair at this stage with it being its initial
Yeah,
release,
Yeah.
and some of the things in BizTalk really now we're in a cloud hosted environment as well may not may not need to be translated. And saying they've looked at what was maybe important to one client, but across, when you look at all the people using BizTalk, they've obviously done an analysis and looked at what functoids are used more than, mostly, and would make sense to actually put the effort to migrating towards a cloud
Yeah.
where,
Yeah.
where they've consolidated ones to actually, expedite the process of mapping.
Mm.
No, that was a good session,
Yeah,
Abhishek. Any other points
very
before
good.
we move on?
No, it's just a good session. So, and
I
again, another
think
big
that's
plus for
very good.
expediting the process of
Yeah.
delivering integration solution, because as we all know, mapping is probably one of the most complex bits.
Yeah. So I think that brings us to the best part. We save the best for the last. So over to you, John.
Okay, right. So before I dive into the more specific topics around business process tracking, application monitoring, I thought it'd be useful to raise an awareness of where Microsoft are going and a couple of concepts that they're introducing. So this is work that they've currently got in progress. So what they are, there's a few bits of terminology here that are currently what they're referring to at this point in time. So please bear in mind that some of these names may change when they actually release them into a public preview and that. So this is all aimed towards delivering a more unified experience around Azure integration services. And to achieve that, they're going to introduce a concept of integration spaces, which are effectively the landing zones for Azure integration services and all the underlying infrastructure, etc. They want to provide a single pane to provide a unified experience for end-to-end integrations, and introduce the concept of applications, integration applications, which are basically grouping a set of Azure resources that you've employed for a specific application, whether that could be like a payroll application, for instance. Application monitoring and business process tracking, I'm going to go into those a bit more depth, but this is all part of their unified experience because they were parts that were all there, but not in a unified way for integration. Simplifying the deployment of code and infrastructure for Azure integration services. Um, Decoupling and managing the code and infrastructure independently. And the last bit is to provide central management of configuration for integration solutions. So if we go to the next slide, so let's say, so this is all about them aiming to deliver a unified experience for users of integration services. So as I briefly mentioned there's two new concepts. And again, these names may change, but at the moment, the initial one on the left they're referring to is integration spaces. And as I explained, they are literally the containers for the resources that will be used for the applications and integration solutions that you will build. So things like provision of an APIM instance, app service plans, etc., things like that. In addition to that, on the right-hand side there, you can see we've got what's termed currently as integration applications. So, and what these do is effectively group specific resources to achieve a solution. So as you can see, there's an example. They've termed one as being a payroll application. Sorry, and going back to the integration spaces, you can see that that one's been identified as a human resources scope. Space. So you could have multiple spaces, divided up by areas of the business, or you could actually divide them up by a technical difference, such as being primary and secondary resources for a DR scenario. But this is just, at the moment, this is just conceptual. But within integration applications, the key bit is that they can select resources that have either been provisioned as part of the integration space or from the subscription. For that, the reason I see for that at the moment, which wasn't confirmed during the demo, which I'm going to raise that and ask, is that you could potentially then have employee resources that are shared across spaces. So, for instance, if you look at the integration services where you may provision integration space where you may provision an instance of APIM, provisioning an APIM instance for every business area would not be a very cost-effective approach. So this is why I think they also allow you to select instances directly from a subscription to pull into your application, as well as integration spaces. That's a bit of an assumption on my point, and something that I am going to reach out to get clarification on. I'm sure we will once because I say it's still work in progress. Okay.
Just a question on, sorry, John, just a question on this one. When you say logical grouping of resources, the first thing that comes to my mind is resource groups. We already have
Yes,
them. So
absolutely.
how it seems a bit conflicting, I feel. I mean, or is it that they are introducing this topic, this concept, just for the purpose of
This is more of a business-centric grouping.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you could have multiple resource groups underlying this.
right,
So this is more for grouping at a business level than at a technical level, let's say.
right?
Just think from the aspect like you have a HR department and you have a payroll department, or you can have a sales department. The
Mm,
HR team are more keen to know or about the services which fall in their business area rather than the payroll or the sales one, right?
yeah. But then there are times when we do create resource groups or classify resource groups as per the business processes.
Absolutely, and I think it's
So
probably a very good question we can raise with Microsoft, so because this is still in work in process, and how they see them working hand in hand.
yeah,
So it
yeah,
may be that an integration application, when you create it, creates a specific resource group under the covers. That I don't think has been decided and certainly wasn't communicated. So it's a very good point, and probably something we raise. We may not get an answer yet because it's
yeah.
still work in
It's still work
progress,
process. I
but it
agree.
is a very good point.
Thanks for that.
Okay, can we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so digging down a bit deeper then into one of the key aims of this unified experience is around application monitoring. So application monitoring at this point in time, as they're envisaging it, is going to be set up as part of an integration application. So if you've set up an application for payroll, you'll be able to apply application monitoring at that level. So if we look there, as it says on the right side, it's a business-centric grouping of resources for monitoring and tracking, as well as, so you'll be able to configure alerts against one or more of the resources that are employed within that application, and simplifying, and this is also intended to simplifying the creation of those alerts by providing common use cases and defaults. Once they are set up, then it will provide this a view so that you can respond to alerts, and say it's an aggregated view of all the resources, not just an individual resource. And finally, a dashboard that will provide that single pane of view within an integration application. Then you can drill down into the various tabs and analyze, get a deeper analysis of any component that may be failing, let's say. So that's just a brief overview. Sachin and Abhishek, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, so just to add here, like the idea is to use the existing application site and monitoring concept. So I think Microsoft is not uh, like inventing the wheel here. They just use the same service platform available, but to give you a better unified integration application view
Yeah,
Mm,
here.
yeah.
yeah,
So it would be specific to the application, or as you said, like the business process, basically.
mm,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah,
I see this as a big plus
Yeah,
because this is going to provide an end-to-end monitoring solution, which we quite often have to heavily customize a solution to achieve that. And this
yeah.
is going to really simplify that process and expedite the process of delivering the solution. So yeah, so this is a nice leap forward, let's say. I'm looking forward to the introduction of it. Okay,
Okay.
next slide. Right, so this is around the other key area that they're looking to deliver a unified experience, and this is around business process tracking. So, and the intention of this is so that with it being grouped inside, again, inside an integration application, one of the things I should call out is that at an application level, you'll be able to apply, so because you've got RBAC behind this, so this can be, access can be granted to a specific set of business users. So they can actually then define the business processes and stages, and the properties that can be, that they want to be defined as part of that business process. And then once they've done that, so this is a collaboration, this allows a close collaboration between the business SMEs and the integration developers. So then based on those properties they define that they want to track, which could be a key business identifier, such as a purchase order, for instance, or in the case of something like a university, a student ID, let's say, then the once that's done, the integration developer then can go into that application and he can start mapping it to workflows, let's say, and creating the tracking profile, which comes next. You go to the next slide.
Sorry,
Oh, yeah.
there's a question asked here. Is it and different to business activity monitoring? So I would, would you like to answer?
From what
Yeah.
I've seen so far, I mean, I'll hand it to you. From what I've seen so far, there are some very close similarities in the fact that you're going to be creating a tracking profile, and employing that. And but I haven't dug. I must admit, I haven't dug into it very great detail. This is still work in progress. So, Sachin, Abhishek, if there's anything you might have teased out from actually being at the conference.
Yeah. So idea here is again. Microsoft is more focusing on the use cases where they can address the BizTalk migration. So there was a demand and the question earlier around the BAM. So this is similar to the BAM, what we have in BizTalk. And at this point, as just John mentioned, it will give a capability to the business to look into their application, like if I'm a part of order department, so I'm keen to know, like, once I push the order, whether it's get completed, if it's stuck, at what stage it is, so there's no need to go to the support team or the operation team every time, right? So business can monitor and do a level of self serve using these business process tracking. So yeah, it's similar to the BAM.
Cool. Thank you for that, Abhishek.
Um,
Okay, so the next point of it, and the next, I say, the next stage of doing that, so obviously the business users have they've defined their properties that they want to be tracked. The developer has then started to map those properties to a workflow. As it says, shows there, the designer for the workflow is can be loaded into the integration application there, as it shows, and then once it's all been delivered, the business SMEs can review process transactions and visualize them. So you can see, well, you can see it, but basically they can see a list of business identifiers, which for the transactions and what state they're in. One of the things I wasn't able to identify from what I've seen from watching the recordings and from what I've read is something that is a common ask across our clients, and that's the ability to be able to search for a unique business identifier. I can see there is a search box at the top left-hand side, but whether that achieves it, I don't know. So, for instance, if I wanted to search for whether a record for a specific, say, student record or a purchase order has been processed, I'd like to be able to put that unique identifier in and then bring up the relevant transactions. Do you know if that's currently possible, or that's one of the things they're aiming to achieve?
Yeah, I think Wrangler confirmed it's possible based on the business properties which you defined in the transactions, right? So, but he didn't show us, but he said, yeah, it's possible to search based on the properties.
yeah,
Field.
I
And
did.
that could be the identifier that we need to look at, like when the milestones can be mapped to, like and that could be a kind of unique identifier in the flow, John.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah,
So we got some good questions
yeah,
just being raised there. So there's Dan's raised a good point as well, saying quite possibly the integration application purely for the new monitoring rather than to replace resource groups, etc. So it may not do any. There may not be any conflict with regards of that. It's purely just to sit over the top,
Yeah,
let's say, which is absolutely, you might be absolutely right there. And so hopefully we get the confirmation from Microsoft soon. And you're absolutely right, it is a game changer because it is, let's say, challenging. You're absolutely right. Uday, I can't answer this. I don't know if Abhishek or Sachin, is integration space for both LA standard and consumption?
I think like it's at the moment available, like since it's work in progress, so nothing is available at the moment. But what they demonstrate to us is using the logic app standard, not the
Yeah,
consumption.
yeah, but they have intention going forward about like if they have finalized this, then for the consumption one as well as IC, that is what they mentioned. But it would be too early to commit anything, even from their side, John.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just a quick bit of interaction between us and the groups. What I'd like you to do, so this is one of the questions that was raised at the conference. I think it'd be good to raise it again here. So now I've given you a brief overview of what the relationship between spaces and applications, so integrated spaces and integration applications. The questions they've raised, if you had a quick look, does the current model support, or the current model rather, supports multiple applications in space at the same level? Do you have needs for grouping or organization of applications, or more grouping organizations? There's some suggestions there of does it meet your needs? So what if you're working from a top down, 1, 2, 3, 4, it'd be really useful, I'd say, for feedback to hear what those listening think. If it meets, then put 1. If you need application group support for monitoring at scope of individual application, put 2. If you need application group and support for monitoring at the scope of application group, put 3. And if you need more than 2 levels of application hierarchy, put 4. I mean, for me, I can certainly see possibility for another level to be able to possibly cater for primary and secondary in a DR scenario, possibly. But so for me, I would put possible for 4 at this stage.
I think I would also go for 4. Yeah, I could see the use case for that. Yeah.
Yeah, those listening remotely, feel free to add your view on this as well.
Okay, I think while we wait for
Yeah.
somebody to comment on that, I know that we have come to almost the end of this session. Just a quick one to check with you guys, like what were your favorite topics? I know there were a lot of topics discussed in at Integrate, but what was the main thing that caught your eye? Was it one of the topics that we discussed here, or it could be something else completely different?
I think from my point of view, Logic App Standard deep dive was
Mhm.
quite helpful.
Right, and I think it covered some of the points that you have mentioned: unified
Yeah,
experience,
yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, and the data
I
map
think
also.
for me, number one is this unified experience,
Mm,
and number two is the way Microsoft is investing highly on logic app standards and
Mm-hmm.
coming up new features, tools.
Mm.
yeah,
uh, yeah, that's catch me out.
yeah,
And yeah, they said they are improving the onboarding for the Logic App Standard with the VS Code. That's another,
Yeah,
point catch my eye. Like yeah,
mhm,
because most of the developers when they get started with Logic App Standard, they normally struggle with what extensions are required to support, and with these all new features, even data
yeah,
mapper and so they are coming up with the onboarding pack kind of thing, so that journey would be smooth from that
yeah.
perspective.
Yeah. What I thought was reassuring for people who are like on the cusp, like for BizTalk teams or people who are thinking of moving their BizTalk applications onto Azure. I think there's a lot of movement, positive movement, right steps in the right direction. I think it's a lot reassuring for them. I think compared to last year, for example, there seems to be a lot of movement in that area. So I think that was a positive,
Mm.
and definitely I'm looking forward to seeing a bit more clarity on this unified experience, and how do we go about creating those levels, and understanding how we work with them. I think those are the main points for me.
Yeah.
How about for you, John?
For me, I honestly think it is this unified experience and the way they're going with that. But I think across the board, it's been integrate, delivered a nice mix of
Mm,
current things that could deliver value right now and
Yeah.
available for use, which can expedite delivery and and implement cost optimizations,
Yeah.
as well as giving a strong direction to where they're going.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it was a really good integrate this year.
Yeah.
A
This
lot of
was
value.
I think the last couple of years, last 2, 3 years, they've had really good integrate session. But I think this one was very interesting. Yeah, for sure. Just on the point that you had asked earlier on about this current model, we've got two answers. I mean, or two comments by Darren, who said four. He would like to go for. He would need more than two levels of application hierarchy, and he's also added that challenge here is how you model when.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think this will all. That's why they're gathering the feedback now to try and, as it's work in progress, to see where people believe it's worth, adding extra. Because there's no point in adding extra complexity if it's
Yes,
just going to make
if
it,
it's yeah,
an unwieldy beast, let's say.
exactly.
So
Yeah,
yeah,
agree.
absolutely, I agree. There's certainly going to be challenges within it, and I think
Yeah,
that's why they're reaching out to get views now.
yes. So certainly clarity on this will help. So we'll have to just wait and watch the
Thank you for
space.
that, Darren. It's certainly something we can feed
Yeah,
back up to the product team.
yeah. And Abdul Rahman has also agreed that he would also want two levels of application hierarchy. And I think Noshad has mentioned his favorite point, which was the data mapper. If anybody else has any points to add, please feel free to do that. Are there any more questions at this point on any of the topics? I know that we have a couple that we didn't look at, so maybe I can just quickly go through this list. Uh, the first one of the first questions that we received was how about the licensing of this resource? If I remember correctly, that was to do with API Center. I may be wrong. Uh,
Yeah, it could be. At this point, yeah, we don't have the clear guidelines from Integrate or from the documentation since it's in private preview.
Yeah,
yeah,
I think
Yeah,
it's free at the moment, isn't
yeah,
it?
yeah.
But
It's free
they
at the
don't have a
present.
costing
Yeah,
model
yeah,
yet.
yeah.
yeah. Is it possible to automate the test cases, create workflows in Azure load testing?
Yeah,
We
Yeah.
we have
yeah,
answered that.
yeah, yeah.
So let's move on to the next one, which was what is the cost per virtual user in Azure load testing? Is there any limit on maximum number of virtual users? And is it possible to generate load from multiple geographies?
So I think the resource that we are provisioning here, it's specific to the region. So it should be within the region, like when you said the load testing. In terms of the maximum users, so as I said, like test engine, we can go for 45, the maximum count, and per test engine, the recommendation that it should be up to 250 virtual users that we can use for.
Right. Okay. That's helpful to know. Um, d- I think the next question is to do with data mapper, where do these functions support different programming languages? Like for complex mappings, we have script functoids in BizTalk. So similar to that, do they support different programming languages? I think it's for
We
you,
d-
Abhishek.
yeah, at moment we don't have that support, but Microsoft, as I mentioned, they are planning to come with a custom functions to write where you can use different scripts and C sharp code and inline XSLTs. So we have to wait for them.
I think there was another related question. Does it support multi-input schemas? Oh, that's a good one. Naushad has asked that. Yeah.
Yes, so the same question was
Yeah.
asked, and I remember the answer whether Wagner is yes, if you provide the input in the correct format.
Right.
Uh, like we are doing the same currently with the transformation action also. But the one thing which is not supported, just to add on it, uh, the multi schema support is not there. So if you have
Right.
imported schema as child, we
Mm,
can't do it at the moment.
Mm.
right. Okay. Okay, so that answers almost all our questions. I hope I've not missed any. Oh, Naushad has asked another question. Does the mapper provide a connectivity or integration with keyword lookup? Ah, interesting.
Uh, yeah, it's an interesting question.
Interesting
I
question.
haven't tried. Need
Yeah,
to try, and then we can answer you back, Nashad.
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
So I think if we move on to the next slide, because it holds, I guess it contains information about the email. Oh, Darren has mentioned that all aspects of unified experience potential game changer, to use that expression again, shows Microsoft are serious about maturing AIS and compete with other iPaaS providers. Yeah, I
Absolutely,
agree.
Dan.
Yeah.
Couldn't
Agree with
agree
that.
more.
Okay, so I think we are come. Okay, Ronica said thanks for the session. It was very useful. So thanks again, guys. Before we close the call, why don't yeah? So I was going to say that if anybody has any pressing integration need, or you feel that you would like our feedback or expertise in helping your integration requirements, please do reach out to us. Our email ID is digital.cluster.uk@reply.com. And even if you have any feedback or comments about what you would like to see, maybe for another round of a roundtable session, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll get that arranged. Thank you anyway for your time and thank you for joining us. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, please feel free to provide the feedback also for this session. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.